What's going on, YouTube? Thomas L here. Since Tyler Perry is once again dressing up as Madea in the new Madea Family Funeral, which is, of course, his last incarnation as Madea, I decided to do my top 10 other favorite times where actors actually, dressed up as females in a film. Because there's been lots of movies where an actor's, decides to play like a female, dress up as a female in movies. So with that being said, here's my list. Coming in at number 10 are Wesley Snipes, Patrick Swayze, and John Leguizamo, played by Swayze, and Noxeema Jackson, played by Wesley Snipes, impressed regional judges in competition, securing berth in the national in Los Angeles. When the two meet pathetic drag Nova Rodriguez, played by John Leguizamo, one of the losers that evening, who's like the Tom, Vita, and Maxime, agrees to take the hopeless youngster under their wing. Soon they, set off on like a road trip across America and struggle to, make it in like a Los Angeles time. This is a really good little film. I mean, it is a little weird seeing Patrick Swayze playing a female. I mean, in the 80s, you mostly known him as, from stuff like Dirty Dancing or Roadhouse. I mean, seeing him as a female is a little bit odd. And Wesley Snipes, I mean, years before he got cast as Blade, he ended up, being in drags. And also you got John Leguizamo, who I've always been a fan of. This is a really decent little film. I mean, it's not great, nothing like that, but it's a pretty decent little road trip. And I really like the chemistry between the three leads. And I mean, if you guys haven't seen To Wong Foo, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, I highly recommend it. I think you'll enjoy it. All right, coming in at number 9 will, of course, be Tyler Perry in the Madea films. I mean, I think Tyler Perry really plays this role perfectly. I mean, I really like it when he plays Madea. Like, Madea is a pretty funny character, in my opinion. Some of the stuff that Madea says kind of cracks me up. Tyler Perry plays Madea pretty well. And, yeah, I mean, it's a shame that, he's ending Madea this week, but because I think he's, he plays the role really well. And hopefully when the final Madea movie comes this week, hopefully, it'll end off with pretty much, hopefully Tyler Perry will send Madea off with a high note, Because, I mean, Tyler Perry, he's been playing Madea for, like, years. I mean, I believe Madea was, like, he played Madea in, like, a play, and then, Madea made her big screen appearance with Diary of a Mad Black Woman, and then years later, Madea became, like, a popular character. She became a popular character years out, so. All right, coming in at number 8 is Marlon and Shawn Wayans in White Chicks. I mean, I love White Chicks. It's kind of more of a guilty pleasure of mine, but it's hysterical. I mean, you got Terry Crews is in this. Jamie King has a part in this. Brittany Daniels. I really dug this movie. I mean, in it, it's about 2 FBI agents named Marcus, played by Marlon Wayans, and Kevin Copeland, played by Shawn Wayans, who accidentally, foil like a drug bust. So as punishment, they are like forced to escort a pair of socialites to the Hamptons, where like they're going to be used as bait for a kidnapper. And so like pretty much they have to pose as like females here. Like they're supposed to be blonde white females. Hence the name White Chicks. I mean, it's a shame that Marlon and Shawn Wayans never really decided to go ahead and do a sequel to this, because I would love to have seen another one. I mean, it's directed by their other brother, Keenen Ivory Wayans. This movie has some pretty funny jokes in it. I mean, Marlon and Shawn Wayans, their relationship here was pretty funny. Yeah, I mean, White Chicks is the best. If you guys never had a chance to check out White Chicks, I highly recommend it. It's a really funny gem. Coming in at number 7 is Eddie Murphy in The Night Professor. Now, here, Eddie Murphy played a bunch of roles. I mean, of course, he played Sherman Klumps. He played Buddy Love. He also played his own dad in this, and he also dressed up as females as well. Here, Eddie Murphy, dressed up as Sherman's mom and Sherman's grandmother. Oh man, Eddie Murphy as the grandmother is hysterical. Like, one of my favorite moments in Night Professor has got to always be the dinner scenes. I mean, when when Eddie Murphy is when Eddie Murphy dressed up as pretty much the mother is sitting next to his son, and the son passes gas, she, and of course Eddie Murphy as the mother goes, Hercules, Hercules. I love that scene. Then some of the scenes that Eddie Murphy says as the grandmother is hysterical. I mean, these are really funny Eddie Murphy roles. Now, The Night Professor is, of course, a remake of the Jerry Lewis comic. And the Jerry Lewis one is good. I got admit, I kind of like the remake a little more. It has lots of laughs, and Eddie Murphy, I mean, he plays these roles really well. Now, of course, he's no stranger playing a female because he was also in Norbit, which, oh god, Norbit's so terrible. Night Professor is definitely Eddie Murphy's better work when he's playing a female. So, and I mean, if you guys never checked out The Night Professor with Eddie Murphy in it, you guys should check it out. It's really funny. But you don't have to bother with the sequel. I mean, a few years back, after this one, he did like a sequel called The Klumps, which featured Janet Jackson in it. Oh god, that one's so terrible. The first film is the best. All right, coming in at number 6 is Martin Lawrence in Big Mama's House. I mean, before a couple years before Tyler Perry became Madea, I mean, Martin Lawrence became Big Mama's House. I mean, Martin Lawrence dressing up as pretty much a female is hysterical. I mean, here, Martin Lawrence plays FBI agent Malcolm Turner, who's like a tough street and master of disguise. And so, like, there's really nothing, he can't handle. So he pretty much, takes on, like, the most challenging role ever. And he decides to impersonate as a Southern grandmother and uses, like, few tricks of disguises. And, he pretty much completely transforms himself into Big Mama. I mean, this is one of Marlon Lawrence's better. Like, other than Bad Boys, this is maybe my other favorite Marlon Lawrence role. I mean, I kind of always wanted to see a Big Mama's House and Madea crossover. I'll pay money to see a whole movie with just Marlon Lawrence's Big Mama and Tyler Perry's Madea. I'll pay money to see that in a heartbeat. And I mean, I really dug the Big Mama's House films as well. The second one is okay, but not as good as the first one. And I also really dug the third one, the one that teamed Marlon Lawrence and and Brandon T. Jackson together. That movie was actually pretty funny. I mean, both of them aren't as funny as the first film, but they're still pretty decent. And Big Mama's House is, by the way, directed by Raja Gosel, who also directed Scooby Doo. He did that terrible Show Dogs movie. Big Mama's House is simply the best. And I gotta say, if they announced that Marlon Lawrence would do a fourth one, I'm all for it. All right, coming in at number 5 is Tim Curry in the Rocky Horror Picture Show. The Rocky Horror Picture Show it's a classic. I mean, the movie got released in 1975 or 76, around that era. And I mean, in it, Tim Curry pretty much plays Dr. Frank N. Feather, who's like a precise scientist here. I mean, before Tim Curry became Tim Curry had some really interesting roles. He played like the butler in Clue. He also played the butler again in Home Alone 2. Not to mention, he's best known for the original Pennywise in It. But of course, he'll of course always be Dr. Frank N. Feather in Rocky Horror Picture Show. It's a horror musical classic. Like, it has some pretty good music in it. I mean, I really dug this movie. And I believe, what's his name? Adam Lambert actually played the role in in that live televised event thing, which wasn't all that great, to be honest with you. I mean, no one could really top Tim Curry's performance. I mean, if you guys never had a chance to check out Rocky Horror Picture Show, I highly recommend it. I think it's a little bit weird and probably a little outdated, but I think you'll enjoy it. All right, coming in at number 4 is Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis in Some Like It Hot. Now, if I recall correctly, I think this is probably Marilyn Monroe's first feature. I could be mistaken there. But of course, this featured Marilyn Monroe, who, let's be for real, she was pretty much one of the gorgeous women of all time. I mean, she was the Scarlett Johansson of that era. She was the Margot Robbie of that era. And Some Like It Hot, I think, is a classic. I mean, it of course stars two legends, Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis. And in it, slick saxophone player Joe, played by Tony Curtis, and his long-suffering buddy Jerry, played by Jack Lemmon. It provides a quick plan to escape from Chicago with their lives because they actually witness a mafia's murder. And so in it, they disguise themselves as women, and they join a all-female jazz band and hop on a train bound for sunny Florida. And so Joe pretty much pretends to be a millionaire to win the band's sexy singer Sugar, played by Marilyn Monroe. And so Jerry pretty much finds himself pursued by a real millionaire, played by Joe E. Brown, as things heat up, and the mobsters are pretty much one step closer at getting them. Some Like It Hot is a classic. It's probably one of my favorite old feature films. I mean, if you guys ever want to see some of the old-timey films, I would recommend Some Like It Hot. It's hysterical. I really like the chemistry between Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon. Marilyn Monroe is actually pretty good here. This also has some pretty good laughs. I mean, I don't know if the jokes really holds up today as they did back then, but it's a pretty good one. I mean, I highly recommend Some Like It Hot. And it's directed by Billy Wilder, too, who's a pretty decent director. I mean, definitely check out Some Like It Hot. I think you'll enjoy it. Oh, by the way, Tony Curtis is Tony Curtis was the father of Jamie Lee Curtis, by the way. So there's a little tidbit for you there, too. All right, coming in at number 3 is John Travolta in Hairspray. Of course, Hairspray is pretty much one of my favorite musical movies ever. I mean, John Travolta as Tracy's mother, Edna Turnblad, that is perfect casting. I mean, there's been other people who played Edna over the years, like Harvey Fierstein played Edna in both on Broadway and in that live televised event. Divine played Edna in the 80s one, which I think was directed by John Waters. But the best portrayal of Edna has got to be John Travolta in Hairspray. Who knew that John Travolta as a woman could work out well? It works out perfectly here. And it was pretty much John Travolta's comeback to musicals, because before this, he haven't really done a musical since, I believe, Grease, and that was years ago. And it's pretty funny that in this, the movie also features Grease 2 actress Michelle Pfeiffer. So there's like a Grease connection in Hairspray. And I also like the mother and daughter relationship between Edna and Tracy. Tracy is, by the way, played by Nikki Blonsky. Nikki was really great in this. I mean, kind of wish she became a bigger star. I mean, I really thought she was great in Hairspray. And also, you had Zac Efron. James Marsden was great in this. Who else was in this? Oh yeah, Queen Latifah. It was directed by Adam Shankman. I simply love Hairspray. I mean, I remember seeing this movie about 3 times when it got released. It's probably one of my favorite movies of 2007 as well. And it all has to do with John Travolta's performance. I mean, how on earth did John Travolta not get an Oscar nomination for this is beyond me. I really simply love this movie. All right, coming in at number 2 is Dustin Hoffman in Tootsie. Now, here, Dustin Hoffman plays a New York actor, Micah Dorsey, who's a talented perfectionist who is like so hard on himself, and others that like his agent, played by Sidney Pollack, who I believe also directs the film too. Anyway, pretty much, he can't really like no longer find work for like his agent, and no longer find work for him. So after like a soap opera audition, goes poorly. Michael reinvents himself as an actress named Dorothy Michael and wins the part. And like what was supposed to be a short-lived role turns to like a long-term contract. But when Michael voices for his castmate Julie, played by Jessica Lange, complications of course develop that pretty much could of course wreck everything in his path. I mean, you remember that episode of Family Guy when Stewie wanted to audition for a Jolly Farm, but he couldn't because there was only females, and so in order to enter, he dressed up as like a female here. That's pretty much a parody of Tootsie. Yeah, so when you think of that episode in Family Guy, just think of Tootsie. Tootsie is a classic. I mean, I believe this movie got released in the 80s. I think 80s or 70s, somewhere around there. I mean, Dustin Hoffman as Tootsie, I mean, Dustin Hoffman as a female is really perfect. He plays that role really well. And yeah, I mean, if you guys never seen Tootsie by now, I highly recommend it. I think you'll enjoy it. I mean, seeing Dustin Hoffman play a woman is a bit odd, but it actually works out pretty well. And let's be for real, Dustin Hoffman is a great actor, and him playing a woman was definitely. I mean, over the years, Dustin Hoffman has played many amazing roles. Now, I've been talking about Kramer versus Kramer a lot. Rain Man was great. Man, one of these days I gotta do my top 10 Dustin Hoffman movies because that guy has a really cool resume. Maybe on his birthday or something, I don't know if when his next movie will be, because after the whole misconduct stuff, I'm not going to answer that. But after lots of controversy around him, maybe on his next birthday or whatever, I might do my top 10 Dustin Hoffman movies, because he's definitely one of the greatest actors. Anyway, now my number 1 favorite film where a guy pretty much dresses up as a female is pretty much in the thumbnail. That will, of course, be Robin Williams in Mrs. Doubtfire. I mean, Robin Williams, him in Mrs. Doubtfire is perfect. I mean, you got Harvey Fierstein, who, of course, is no stranger playing a female since Harvey Fierstein actually played Edna Turnblad on Broadway in the musical, so he's no stranger to playing a female. I mean, in this, Harvey Fierstein actually plays Robin Williams' brother, believe it or not. And so, in it, Robin Williams, his character, has trouble. Trouble that, he has low access. He can't really have access to his children. So, his character's named Daniel Hillard. So like he hatches a elaborate plan, and so like with the help of his brother, played by Firstein, he dresses up as an older British woman and convinces his ex-wife Miranda, played by Sally Field, to hire him as a nanny. Which of course he does. Of course, Sally Field's character doesn't really know that that is her husband. And so, like, Mrs. Doubtfire pretty much wins over the children and helps them. And it's I think it's a pretty cute little premise as well. And the movie is a classic. I mean, it's directed by Chris Columbus, who also went on to direct two of the Harry Potter films, and he also did Home Alone and Pixels and a few other stuff. Mrs. Doubtfire is hysterical. I mean, Robin Williams as a female that's pretty cool casting there. Of course, he had Pierce Brosnan. The one who played Matilda was in this. The kids was pretty good here too. And Sally Field. I mean, she's Sally Field. She's always the best. Mrs. Doubtfire is it's probably one of the best comedies of the '90s, and it all has to do with Robin Williams. I mean, Robin Williams was perfect in this. He was super funny. Like some of the lines he had as Mrs. Doubtfire was hysterical. This has some pretty funny lines too. And I mean, I really love this movie. I remember like before Robin Williams passed, there was like talks about them possibly doing a sequel, but sadly Robin Williams passed away, and they couldn't really get one made, which I think is for the best of it. I mean, I'm okay with remakes because if they stink, who cares? Still got the original. I mean, I'm okay with any Robin Williams movies being remade. Like, I'm okay with Dead Poet Society getting remade. I'm okay with Good Morning America Good Morning Vietnam. I'm okay with that getting remade. I mean, I'm even okay if they were to, instead of doing like a sequel to Jumanji, if they were announced that they were going to do like a full remake with another actor playing the Robin Williams role, I would have been okay with that. But a remake of Mrs. Doubtfire, I don't think that could really happen. I mean, no one could really play this role other than Robin Williams, And I mean, no one could really imitate Robin Williams. Like him as Mrs. Doubtfire is just perfect, and no one could really. I mean, Robin Williams he was great as a role, and that's why I'm actually okay with. I'm going off subject here, but with the Aladdin movie, that one I'm okay with that interpretation of the genie because Will Smith isn't imitating Robin Williams, and that's something I did not want. I'm okay with someone being recast as the genie for Aladdin, as long as the person playing the genie doesn't go and like imitate him or whatever, and I'm perfectly okay with that. Yeah, but Mrs. Doubtfire it's a comic classic. If you guys still never seen it, if it's online or if it's on, it actually gets shown on TV once in a while. I highly recommend it. I think you'll enjoy Mrs. Doubtfire. Anyway, that's pretty much it. Let me do the quick rundown. Number 10, Wesley Snipes, Patrick Swayze, and John Leguizamo